This is the Authority Company Podcast, conversations with leaders that are designing our future. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and my wife is obsessed with the Billy Bob Thornton series, Landman, which tells a story of a very crooked oil and gas guy in Texas. And coincidentally, my guest today is an oil man, but minus all the Billy Bob drama. His name is Rich Tabaka. He's the author of the new book, How to Invest in Oil. Stories, insights, and strategic recommendations from an oil entrepreneur. So we're going to talk about what it's like to really be in the oil industry, how to get started, some tips and recommendations, and what he's learned along his journey to become an oil man. Rich, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks, Joe.
Your life is so interesting. So I want to start at the beginning, really, and the fact that you are the son of immigrants like myself. And I've always felt like I've never been able to sort of shake that immigrant ethos of like work till your fingers bleed, work till you pass out, wait for the man to give you a check every 2 weeks. I've never been able to shake that after all these decades on this planet. How ingrained is that sort of upbringing of yours, being your parents being Polish immigrants, and how has that sustained itself? As I always say it's wired into my DNA. It's like nature versus nurture kind of thing. This is like it was in my DNA to start, and then it got hardwired seeing it through my parents.
Joe, it's the exact same way. It's my father really instilled it in me. Not to say my mother didn't work hard; she really did. My father instilled it in me, and hard work is just part of our life. My dad always used to say, when you want to get somewhere, you got to outwork the person in front of you, and then outwork the person in front of him and never stop. Always be hungry.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And there's always two types of immigrants that I've run into. There's the immigrant that is sort of an entrepreneur, works for companies, and then there are the other side of the coin, the ones that are entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs. And I like to say those are the crazy ones. Those are the ones who put themselves in harm's way on purpose. Was entrepreneurship part of your dad's learnings, or is that something you branched off on your own?
I branched off on my own. It was not part of my parents' life, although they would have loved it to be. Both my sisters are in the medical field, and I took the path of entrepreneurship because I wanted to take full advantage of what my parents came here to do. And being an entrepreneur is one of the best things that someone could do in their life. It challenges you, it rewards you, and you'll learn a lot about yourself.
Awesome. All right, so let's get into about yourself and the work you've done. You're an oil and gas guy, and so your book is about how to invest in oil. And what to me I found funny was like, until I read your book, like I wouldn't even know how to start. Like we all get kind of raised in this world. If you're Gen Xer and beyond, like you know how like the stock market works and real estate. Those basic pillars of investment. But when you write a book called How to Invest in Oil, my eyes kind of like squint a little bit. Like, wait, what? You mean I can invest in oil if I wanted to? Like, tell us how you made that jump into that being your life.
I made the jump when I exited the management of my construction company. I departed the day-to-day operations, and when I exited, I really wanted to do oil on my own and not with anyone else. And I got into it and said, I'm going to do it the hard way, meaning the hard work and do every aspect. And having to do all the aspects is really where you dive much deeper into it. And writing the book of How to Invest Oil, I wanted to share my experiences, what I've learned, what not to do with everybody. And I think I did a great job delivering that message to all the readers.
So as I mentioned, we all kind of know, like, if you want to invest in stock markets, you open up an account with or it's a Fidelity or Charles Schwab. If you want to get into real estate, you can kind of just buy real estate. And I'm saying like it's easy in air quotes, but what's the path to investing in oil? Is it as easy, in, again, air quotes, or is there more like sort of hurdles you have to jump over?
It's pretty easy to get involved.
Okay.
You do have to meet one requirement. You have to be an accredited investor, and that's simply defined as you can meet it one of two ways. by income or by net worth. On the income side, you have to make over $200,000 per year for the last 2 years, or with your spouse at $300,000, or have a net worth of over $1 million, and you can't include your primary residence in that calculation. After you meet that requirement, it's pretty easy to get involved, reach out, and I love going over all the projects, and I love having everybody learn every aspect of it. You don't need to be a professional. I just want you to understand. If you want to, I want you to understand the entire process.
Cool. And I know for many of us lay people not in the oil industry, you think oil in the United States, Texas. Don't mess with Texas. You are not a Texas guy. I mean, maybe you dabble in it, but you are basically based in oil in Kansas, which again, until I read your book, Rich, I had no idea there was oil in Kansas. So how did you learn about oil in Kansas, and why you feel like it's a different different playing field than, say, like the ones we're typically used to?
Kansas ranks 10th or 11th on the list of production when it comes to the 50 states. I got introduced to Kansas through a friend and / geologist. He worked in many different states, and primarily he focused on Kansas. And I looked into it. I visited him out on a couple wells and saw the success, of course, saw the failures. And that's really how I was introduced into Kansas. Trust me, I would have said the exact same thing before I was introduced to it.
And so from what I understand, Kansas, you said, is 10th, but it's also 1% of the U.S. total in oil. Does this limit its scalability? Because when you hear something like 1%, you're like, Jesus, is there any growth here? like tell me about how you use that as a starting point to grow.
There's a lot of oil in Kansas, and there's still a lot of oil to be found in Kansas.
Okay.
There's specifically speaking, the western part of the state still has a vast area that's never been shot with 3D seismic, never been looked at. There's many large structures that are still waiting to be discovered.
Interesting. And in the book you read, you talk about the reason you kind of got into oil was sort of the tax benefits to
Yes, sir.
it. Can you reveal, I always, when we have these conversations, I don't want to dig too deep into the book because I want people to enjoy it, but just I'm more a curiosity's sake, like, tell us about those tax benefits when it comes to getting involved in oil.
The main benefit is the IRS allows us to deduct what's called intangible drilling cost. And that equates to roughly 75 to about 85% of your investment the first year. You'll receive K1 with a deduction of anywhere from 75 to 85% of your initial investment for that first year. Now that, let's just say 15% is depreciated over the next 5 years.
Okay. Now like we said, you're a Kansas guy, even though you're not from Kansas. You're a Colorado guy, but you're a Kansas guy when it comes to oil. You've mentioned when it comes to investing in companies, if they're involved in a lot of states, that you consider a red flag. Now, as you know, Rich, in this world, is even like the Warren Buffett's of the world, diversify. So, get involved in all different things. But when it comes to oil, you think it's a red flag when a company's involved in multiple states, right?
It's not at the top of my list, Joe, but absolutely it is. If you haven't found your home and where you want to focus on, I think that throws up a little bit of question of what the company wants and what the company is doing.
Okay. And one of the risks of being oil is dry wells. And I think we all see the old timey movies of like all of a sudden the drill will stop and they're like, all right, it's done. Is that just an old timey movie thing, or is that something we see all the time where all of a sudden, like, oh, that well's dry?
That happens, including when we're drilling it. Unfortunately, it can be a dry hole. It happens. It's part of the industry. Drilling oil wells is not an easy thing. There's a lot of items that you need to create a very good oil well. And on the flip side, Joe, after production, when it's been producing for years and years, of course, it's going to dry up and it's time to plug that well.
And, you mentioned your company is Allied. It's all about transparency. But when it comes to being transparent and, hey, this is the risk. Like it is one of those things where like, are you transparent when it comes to, listen, up front, there you can be very successful doing this, but the almost the gambling, not that we want to use a word like that, but like the gamble of getting involved in a well is part of the transparency, right? You're upfront with folks.
Very upfront. One saying that I like to tell everyone is, don't invest any money that you can't afford to lose. It's drilling oil wells is risky business. I want everyone to understand that and know that. It's very successful, and it's a lot of fun when you have that success. But you mentioned diversification, Joe. Diversify in many wells. Don't throw all your eggs in one basket into this or this. Diversify and throw a little into each one. That's a true statement of how you win.
All right, and you mentioned something about the tools, which 3D seismic is the
Yes,
one. Break that down for us. How does that work?
3D seismic is a process of identifying structures within the ground. And how they do that is, on the surface, they'll set up geophones, which are little recording devices, all across the area that you're trying to shoot seismic. Those geophones are hooked up to the control center, I guess you can call it. It's where all the data goes. And on the surface, we have vibrator trucks. I call them thumper trucks. They'll put weight on the surface and vibrate. Those vibrations will go into the earth, bounce back, and those geophones record that. Depending on how they come back and how quickly they come back, all that data gets processed and goes to a geophysicist, and the geophysicist interprets the 3D seismic to see what type of formations and what's going on within that section that area that we shot 3D seismic.
And like every technology, it's not perfect. So what's the variables there? Is like, is there a chance that I mean, I'm assuming is there a chance that it could be wrong?
Absolutely, there is. That's why I believe we call every geophysicist. It's an interpretation of it, Joe. It's what he's thinking is going on. Now, there's other items that can play into and factor into how those vibrations come back. An example could be that we could have a nice thick salt section, which could throw off that vibration, and that in turn, the geophysicist is going to look at that and maybe think there's something there, maybe not.
Okay, so the geophysicist uses this 3D seismic. They say, "Hey, Rich, this looks like we have oil there." You then will not know if there's oil there until you start drilling, correct?
Correct, Joe. 3D seismic shows us that there's some type of structure underground. That's all it tells us. We don't know what's in that structure. It can be water, it can be oil, it can be nothing. It can be dry. And that's the risk. That's the major risk of drilling oil wells.
Obviously, a big part of this conversation is talking about Kansas. And, I looked it up before we talked. There's only 3 million people in the entire state of Kansas, which is like, I think, one borough in New York has 3 times as many people in it. So how does a state being that small complicate or uncomplicate matters? Because when you're that small, I'm assuming there's a fewer number of people owning land. What kind of like drama, what kind of sort of like nuances involved in negotiations when it comes to land? Tell me a little bit about sort of the background of what it's like working in Kansas.
Working in Kansas, you're dealing with good old farm boys, hardworking, honest people that are going out there and they really want to do a good job. Majority of them love what they do out in the oil field, and they'll be doing it until the day they die. Now, you asked about how are the dynamics in Kansas when it comes to different companies, different service companies. It's such a small group that everyone knows everybody. And that's the fact that you had a conversation with them, but you know about them. And if every operator will team up with another group of operators, and I say team up, make a little circle and help each other out. And that's what I love about Kansas. If you need something, you can reach out, and It's there waiting for you. You just need to ask for it.
And so you are a quote unquote outsider of Kansas because I mentioned you're a Colorado kid, growing up Boulder, probably skiing, doing all the things people do out there. Um, what was it like integrating into that world? Like you mentioned, very close knit. Everyone probably knows everybody. And this could be, great lesson for folks who want to get involved in oil investing, but don't know, anyone in it, or like when it comes to Kansas, a smaller state, when the circle is really tight. That what do you call it from Meet the Parents, Circle of Trust, or whatever it is. How were you able to enter that circle of trust?
It was difficult in the first couple of years. Everyone questioned, who is this guy, Rich Tabaka? What kind of company is this? Why are they from Colorado? What are they doing? It took some time to build that trust with different vendors of mine, but I've got to say I've established my name. I have a great relationship with every single vendor of mine, and they'll jump on anything that we need to in a timely manner, of course.
How did you build that trust, though, in terms of just the social dynamics of that? Was it just you having to embed yourself in the community, like more being almost like a politician, shaking hands, kissing babies kind of stuff?
What vendors want is work. And as I built the company up, I was drilling more and more wells, and they like that. And on the flip side, all of them want to get paid, and they want to get paid quickly. And whenever I receive an invoice, a check goes out in the mail the next day, and every vendor of mine absolutely loves that. I was talking to one yesterday, and he mentioned, man, you guys pay very, very fast. And that's a big bonus because they're going to jump on my project before they jump on somebody else's.
Oh, that's great. Good stuff. I think most people probably understand that the volatility of oil prices, and you write about it. And a lot of that is very much supply and demand. Like we all know that come Memorial Day, that the gas prices are going to go up, oil prices will go up because more people will be traveling, and then it'll go down in the winter months and all that jazz. But then there's real points of volatility, like whether it's the pandemic, or maybe war, something happening overseas. For folks that may be nervous about the volatility part of it, which you get into in the book, tell me about, maybe sway some of the so the stressors of that volatility, or is it just being prepared for the volatility?
It's both, Joe. It's being prepared for it. It's a commodity, and we know how commodities fluctuate in price and can be volatile. Now, where oil is at currently, I believe that it's very, very low. It's the major producers need that price to increase much, much further. As far as supply and demand, OPEC and the Saudis have a very good control on oil prices right now. They don't want oil prices to fall any deeper. They have an economy that they have needs, and they have to meet. I believe that the volatility in the Middle East will calm down. I think we'll see oil prices regain that normal aspect of $75 to $85 per barrel here in the next coming months.
So you mentioned OPEC and the Saudis, and I'm just curious because I know a lot has been said about the amount of oil that's being drilled in the States. But are we energy independent of foreign countries? Because the reason I bring this up is it sounds like there's a lot of oil being made here, but we still see those fluctuations when stuff happens in the Middle East, or it's just anything could possibly, whatever could make OPEC and the Saudis change price, what have you. Can we ever get to the point where no matter what happens on the other side of the world, we'll be okay here, or won't affect what's happening here?
We're going to need a lot more investment into oil and gas. Just rough general numbers, the world uses about 100 million barrels of crude a day. The U.S. here, we use 19 to 20. Let's just use 20 for simplicity's sake. We produce roughly a little over 13 million barrels of oil per day. It's going to take a lot of more investment. It's going to take a lot more drilling to get to that point where we're truly energy efficient. We do rely on outside oil on a daily basis.
Rich, you mentioned the pandemic earlier, and during the pandemic, we all remember the hoarding of toilet paper. But in the book, you talk about the hoarding of equipment, which is funny to me. It's like, wait, isn't there enough equipment around to be doing all this stuff? So tell me about how you're able to mitigate that stuff. You know, if that is such a real problem in your industry.
It was when COVID hit, it really was a problem. And my example that I'll give everyone is a VFD. It's a variable frequency drive. It's the control panel that controls the motor on a pumping unit. We weren't able to get those, and they were out on 2.5 or 3 months wait list. How I mitigate that, Joe, is very simply buying ahead of what I'm doing and having that in stock, having it readily available so my electrician can go pick it up, it off. We're not waiting around an extra 2 months or 3 months.
Okay, cool. All right, so we've talked about the good, the bad. Let's get into the ugly, because you mentioned in the book about your first oil investment failed due to fraud.
Yes, sir.
I think for most people, Rich, after one, they would be done. Uh go back, tell us about that moment and what made you want to persevere after going through such hell in that first go round.
That was a tough experience and tough learning experience for myself. I invested with a company out of Texas in multiple projects, roughly $750,000. That CEO is sitting in prison for, I believe, about 15 or 16 years. There's a saying that I say, everything happens for a reason. And what I learned from that experience was be cautious, know everything about the company, know about the people running the company, more importantly. Having that experience and learning allowed me to further educate myself about every single aspect about oil and gas. I got down to myself, but it's a learning experience. I overcame it, and I kept pushing through, because oil is a great investment when it comes to returns. But not only that, it gives a great tax deduction for everybody that first year.
One thing you mentioned, this gentleman that is serving time. In the book, you do not name names, which I think many people would do so. Why was it important for you to just, it sounds like you're like, hey, this dude's already paying for his crimes, but most people would just, Americans, Rich, we love a good old pylon. Why was it sort of important to you to be like, it's really not important to mention who this person was?
It was important, Joe, not to mention his name, because I don't like to point fingers. He's serving his time. He's justice was served. And the main aspect, what I wanted everyone to get out of that was, hey, I lost money. I've been on your side. I've seen what else is out there. And I don't want my company to be that. And it's not. We're very transparent with every aspect. All you have to do is ask.
All right, good stuff. All right, lastly, one more thing about oil before we wrap things up is you mentioned superstition in the oil industry, and you talk about something about like witchers. Is that for real still to this day? Because it sounds like with all the technology we've kind of went through in this conversation, the fact that superstitions still exist in that industry. Can you share a little bit about that?
I myself is superstitious because there's quite a few superstitions out there when it comes to being an operator of oil and gas. One that stands out and comes to mind quickly is you can't bring any women onto the drilling rig. Everyone has their crazy superstitions. I'll tell you a little, this will teach you guys a little bit about me. If I'm drilling 2 or 3 or 4 wells and I hit the first well and it's a very good well, I won't shave until I've done with well number 4.
It was like a playoff beard in hockey.
There you go.
Oh, that's and tell me about the witchers. Are these sort of like these people that are telling you where you should and should not drill?
Witchers are individuals that believe they have some type of inner power to identify different aspects of the geological world. And that's the best way I can put it. To give you just a rough education, Joe, witchers will go out there and use some type of device. Mainly it's 2 rods, and those rods will move depending on where the energy is. And So they'll go out there when you're drilling a well and say you're not drilling the best location. You need to move 200 feet that way. I don't believe in witchers. I believe in the technology that we have, and the technology that we have serves true.
And I'm assuming these witchers would like to be compensated if they use their advice.
100%.
I thought so. I didn't think they were just doing it just the kindness of their own heart. That's good. All right, Rich. So I always wrap up these conversations taking folks behind the dedication of the book, and you dedicate it to your sons Hudson and Caleb. You're the light that guides my path and the inspiration behind every word I write. Tell me about why it was important to dedicate it to your sons, who are, I think, rather young. So the book is probably too young. They're probably not in the demographic of someone who would read How to Invest in Oil. But tell me why it was important to dedicate it to them.
My sons are very young. They're 4 and 2.5 when we're recording this, Joe. And it's very important I want to dedicate the book to them because I want them to know that they can do anything in this world. And there's a saying that I say, and I say we can do, and the boys reply anything. And my parents immigrated to America so we could have those opportunities in this country. This is the greatest country in the world. It gives anyone the opportunity to go out and do anything. And I want my sons to know that and to strive and to work hard for that next level.
Awesome. His name is Rich Tabaka. The book, How to Invest in Oil, Stories, Insights, and Strategic Recommendations from an Oil Entrepreneur. Rich, thanks so much for the time. Thank you very much. Have a great day, and God bless.
Joe, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to find out more information about Rich and our other amazing authors, go to theauthoritycompany.com.